we are just now getting live over on the YouTube channel. So if you want to watch the simulcast, come on over there now that we have whatever that glitch was fixed and we are back up and running. Folks watching over on the YouTube channel, I have been talking to the audio stream over on Subspace Subspace Odyssey Radio. And so our show has been going in its audio format, but we had some glitch and my computer would not connect to the internet. It's done that a few times today already. And as you all know, my small town internet gives me problems all the time. And of course, this latest problem was about 18 minutes ago, and we couldn't get online. So I've been on with a tech ever since. So welcome to the program. I'm Scotty Roberts. I'm your host. And as John Ward would say, back when we did Intrepid Radio together and we'd had problems like this, he'd say, such professionalism. He'd say like that. So professional. And so there we are. Sorry for the lack of professionalism this morning. And I've got other programs starting to try to start up because I have been shutting everything down and everything back on. And that's just the way it goes. So let's do this kind of the right way. You're holding your breath, Steph? Oh, your dog just gassed you. I thought you meant for the show to start. Well, here we are. We're here now. So if you're not over in the chat room, come on over to the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can join the chat room already going. And those of you over on Odyssey Radio, you got us almost as we were supposed to start, just a few seconds late. But you caught us on the tail end of a technical snafu. And so I appreciate your being here. Yes, that too. Scotty, the anticipation is killing me, says Steph. Well, I am so glad. So it's good to have you all here. And we're finally, take a deep, another thing John Ward used to say, he said, take a deep cleansing breath, awoosa. And Rocky Stucci and I used to tease him miserably about that. Give him crap about that. So take your deep cleansing breath with me now. Awoosa. We have a connection to the internet. We have a connection to the radio. It's dark and we're wearing sunglasses. Thank you, JP. Hit it. Here we go. Opening of the show. Little late, but it's okay. Here we go.
Intrepid Radio Program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
So, frankly, I have no idea what we're talking about tonight. I lost all my notes, all disappeared, and it would take me a while to restructure them, so we're just going to go by the seat of our pants. And the last half hour before the show was going to be me kind of composing where I wanted to do things, how I wanted to say things, and that's gone. So here we are. Welcome to the program. I'm Scotty Roberts. I'm your host. This is the Intrepid Radio Program right here on Odyssey Radio. And if you don't know it by now, if you want to just hear the audio version of this show, radio, go on over to the radio station. That is odysseyradio.com. ODYSY radio.com. And you can hear this show in all its audio glory. There are times I think one of the worst things to have happened to the radio shows nowadays that are simulcast is that you can now see us. So we have to act like a bit like we're on TV. We have to look good. We have to have the studio lighting right. And, you know, we can't be picking our nose or sitting here in our undies. Well, I could be in my undies right now and you'd never know it unless I stood up. So I'm pretty sure I'm wearing pants. And so how many cigarettes? Said Randall Flagg. Are you asking me how many cigarettes? I have had 2 Not even full cigarettes in the last almost 7 months. The other day when I talked about it, if that's what you're referring to, I haven't had one since that. So there were a couple of times I thought, I want to go have a smoke. And then I thought, no, I really don't feel like having a smoke. So this is the good thing, is that the smoking craze within me has subsided. I think almost 7 months of not smoking has completely overturned any kind of habitual draw I had to it. And like I say all the time, I was never addicted to cigarettes. I was addicted to smoking them. So I loved smoking cigarettes. Still do. I like the act of it. So, radio, someone still loves you, says Randall Fleck. I'm not sure if I'm catching your meaning, but I appreciate that sentiment. So, radio, someone still loves you. And so we weren't here on Monday of this week. Mostly, I had a couple of people write, whenever I don't show up, maybe I have laid the groundwork for being somebody who does not, who has enough little health issues and buggery things going on that whenever I don't show up, people are like, are you dying? Are you okay? And I appreciate that, but I want you to know, I'm okay. I'm tired. I'm incredibly tired out these days, but I think it's more now. Talk to me about this a little bit. Anybody in health industry? I know, is it Randall Fleck? No, there's somebody else that's health industry. What does Niall say? You remind me of someone who's not addicted to cigarettes, but given the right conversation would smoke 20. Dude, brother, you are spot on. I could sit down, and if I were in a conversation, I'd be having Guinness. I'd be having a good stout, some scotch, and probably smoke a pack. So the right setting. You are absolutely right, Niall. That's exactly what would happen. And the other night we did the St. Patty's Day show, St. Patrick on Friday. Sam was here, and we did that, and we were drinking as we normally do, and the craving to have a cigarette with my drinking was high that night. But I lit one up with Sam, and I took a puff off of it. And Randall Flagg, this is probably then my third cigarette I lit up. I forgot about that one. I took a couple of drags off of it. I didn't have the taste for it, and I put it out. Threw out the whole cigarette. So, yeah, that was worth doing. Lighting it up, I mean. But I couldn't maintain it. It wasn't there anymore. It just didn't work. So, Radio Go-Go Queen, said Randall Flagg to Steph Cuervo Queen. So, we are live over on the radio. For some reason, I feel like there's something else going on that I need to be talking. You ever get that feeling? It's like a reverse elongated deja vu. But somebody else had the other word for that when it's the other way around. And I feel like there's something big. It's big. It's happening. It's there, and I'm supposed to be talking about it, but I couldn't tell you what it is off the top of my head. So we'll figure it out. It'll come to me. I have no real content tonight. I lost all my content in whatever happened to my computer. And I could call stuff up. Well, the Trump verdict and the money stuff. Yeah. I don't know if there's any. I was a little out of it today. Oh, I started talking about that. I'm tired, but the tired is like behind my eyes. And I'm wondering if it's because of the eye surgeries. Nothing wrong with my eye surgeries. They go and they do the follow up and everything's good. I see my sight is different because they didn't correct it to 20/20 vision. That's not what they do when they do the cataract thing. I don't know why they don't. I don't know why they don't just put in a better lens altogether. If they're going to replace the lens, put in a perfect one. but they don't. So they have me at about 20/40 in each eye, which isn't bad, except I have this astigmatism, and my eye sometimes clears all on its own, and I could see crystal clear. Right now, when I'm driving, my computer glasses work better. But I found as the days have gone on, I almost don't need anything for distance anymore. I can look out there across the room and it's crystal clear. I look at my computer, it's slightly, just a slight, like you want to take the button and go, "Mm, oh, just a touch, and clear it up. And so I have to look now. When I work on the computer, I could use these glasses fine. Now I got to tip them. I got to look through the bifocals now for the screen on my computer to be clear, which it never was like that before. So I'm going to have to get all new glasses once my eyes are all healed up. And Israel rejected Hamas's ceasefire terms. Oh, say it isn't so. That's what, the fifth time they've rejected something from Israel over the last 40 years. Rejected a ceasefire, rejected their own country, because you see what Hamas doesn't want. They don't want Israel to coexist with them. They do not wish Israel to coexist. They've given them 95%. I saw several percentage points over the different deals they've been offered by Israel and the world, really. And it's like 95 and 98%. And, it's always been up. Almost everything they want, they're offered, except they don't want to coexist peacefully with Israel. They want Israel gone. They want the land that Israel has. So that's the problem. That's why you keep seeing that. Hey, Sarah Youssef, good to see you over in the chat room. And everybody that's here, by the way, I think I've said hi to most of you in one form or another. If I hadn't, here it is again. Sarah Youssef, good to see you. JP, Jason, good to see you. Niall over in Ireland, is good to see you. And Randall Flagg, not in Ireland. And Steph Cuervo Queen. Where are you, Massachusetts again? Is that a friend of mine that said Massachusetts, he'd always call it. So I don't know why. Let's see. Who else have we got in here? Lucky Stone, good to see you. Oh, that's all that's in the chat room, showing up and showing their face. Well, welcome, face showers in chat room. And we've got a lot more of you watching, but you can come over and join. Come on over. If you've never been in the chat room before, go to the YouTube channel and sign in. You know what? Come on over and say hi in the chat room. Doesn't cost me. Kelly Bell Moran is here. Good to see you, Kelly Bell. And come on over, say hi to everybody. Chat room's a fun place, filled with the Intrepids. And everybody can have a good time discussing things. We don't see your face unless you call in. So it's low key. Just come on into the chat room and say hi. You don't know me, Mom. Hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in a long time. It's nice to see you here. And I have a child. Hi, I love you too. Good night. We had a good day today, huh?
Yeah.
Tell everybody what you did today.
I poop scooped and made $100.
She poop scooped and made $100 today. Well, outstanding. She had 2 yards. She had to poop scoop today. And that's the business. Those of you who had not heard it, I'll tell you the story after I send her off. Okay, good night. I love you.
But I actually have 120 because I had a 20 before I made the $100.
Well, there you go. Well, you don't have this. This show does not require full financial disclosure. So you're good without that. You don't have to tell everybody how much money you have in your wallet. What's in your wallet? Okay, good night. I love you.
Good night.
I'll see you in the morning. So, yes, we started, and most of you have heard, because I said on here, something I have wanted my kids to be able to do is learn a little entrepreneurial flair. And can you start your own business and make better money than, let's say, I started this with Sam 10 years ago. He was 13. And we started the Poo Patrol. And we never really got it off the ground for Sam. But um, I did the logo and the company, and we put together some flyers, and he had to go around the neighborhoods and pass them out. And he just never quite got that far. He just wanted to do other things. So he didn't do it. And then I did it for Flynn, and Flynn didn't want to do it last summer. And so Ellery came to me and said, "Hey, that Poo Patrol thing, is that anything I could do to make some extra money?" And I said, "Extra? Are you making money somewhere else?" "Well, no." I said, "I think you could do this and make some money." So she started this all off a few weeks ago, and we put it up online, the local community pages. And Rainey took them up to the Dollar General where she works a few days a week, and put them out on the counter, and people started calling. And she's going and picking up people's dog poo in their yard. And she's charging like $20 for a small yard, $30 for a big yard. And last week, she did a yard that was about an acre and a half, wooded. It's a big hill going down from the back of and it goes down to a basin and back up a little. It's all trees, and there's paths and things going all through it. It's a gorgeous backyard. And a big open area in the bottom. And she's got 2 dogs. And so she said, "This is much bigger than a big yard. So, I'll pay, I'll talk price." She said, "I'll pay you $60, she told Ellery. And Ellery said, "That's fine." And of course, I'm there helping her with that. And the first time we did it a week ago, she gave Ellery $100. And she said, "Can you come back next week?" So we were back there today, and she got her standard rate, and then the 60. And then we did another house, a big yard, and she got her rate for the big yard plus a $10 tip. So she made $100 today. It was pretty cool. And so she's doing all right. And the way I told all my kids is, if you're going to run this business, I said, keep multiplying the number of yards you do. And I said, you're charging X number of dollars per week until you have too many that you can't do them, because summer, you want to enjoy it, not just work all day as a kid. And so I said, that's where you start getting your friends involved. Tell your friends, I'll pay you X number of dollars per yard. You agree to it and you do it. You do a good job. And then the balance goes to you. And then, of course, we're teaching her about savings as well. Rainey took her and opened up a savings account. And right now, 50% of everything she's making goes right in her savings account. And she just walks in. The last time she walked in, she just handed the cash right to Mom. "Here's half, Mom. Go put that in my bank account, please." So that's a good thing. If you've got kids, I think it's really good thing to teach your kids how to be entrepreneurs, how to run their own business, how to do things for themselves that they can make some money doing. And for right now, for a 9-year-old kid in the 3rd grade, or is she 4th grade, making $100 a week is not bad. So I see you all are talking about other things that this show deals with, which is actual topics. There's this new book, says Niall. I saw your message on that, Niall. UFO of God by Chris Bledsoe. And the book is huge, massive 5-star reviews. The book has interest from CIA, DOD, FBI, and even the Vatican. And now it's even going to be a movie. That's interesting. I have not picked up this book. I have not read it yet. And I think maybe I should. Yeah, flavor is the wrong word when picking up poop. That's for sure, Randall. So she did the Dracula. I'm not sure what that is, Steph. The Dracula. I missed something. I'm just looking to see if there was something I didn't see, but I don't see it. So, and by the way, you don't know me, Mom. It's good to see you here. Haven't seen you here for a long time. It's nice to see you. I see you over on TikTok. And folks, if you want to go subscribe to my TikTok, even after the United States government stepped in and said TikTok can't be here for some reason, and I should be on top of that, and I'm not. All I know is that they're trying to, under the umbrella of it's owned by a Chinese company, and Chinese is our spy enemy, that we're now discontinuing, and I don't know to what extent, because it's still there and it's still going to be there. So I don't know what it is. They're trying to get an American company to own it. So, yeah, it's interest bearing, Sarah. It's interest bearing. Let's see. Niall said you discussed the book with Professor Bauer. You have no idea what he replied. So cool. I'm gonna have to take a look at that, and you might be onto a topic of shows where we can go through whatever this particular author Bledsoe has to say about his book. What do you call it? UFO of God? Let me see what that is. UFO of God by Bledsoe. Let's see what it says here. Audio books, Audible, Bledsoe. It's coming up in audio books. Let's see. I just want to see what it says. Publisher's summary. Soon to be a major motion picture. The case began 16 years ago, and the government was the only one that listened. Why is that? The Invisible College took notice, and so should you. Are the biblical stories of angels in the Old Testament being witnessed today? Are UFOs messengers from God? Chris Bledsoe, a deeply religious family man and a successful business owner from North Carolina, was on the verge of an unthinkable after losing everything in the 2007 financial crisis and suffering from a debilitating chronic disease. Fishing along with the banks of the Cape Fear River with 3 co-workers and his teenage son, he walks away from the group and cries out to God in a desperate prayer for help. Suddenly, a UFO appears and saves his life, cures him of his illness. Experiencing 4 hours of missing time, he returns to his group and finds them troubled. Terrified, they run for their lives as several UFOs chase them home. This is the true story of hope, love, lies, and deception, involving officials from the U.S. government, CIA, NASA, a string of professors, and the church. Prepare to go on a spiritual journey of awakening and transformation with a visit from the Lady, capital L. Remote viewing, assassination plot of the Pope, the Vatican, dripping orbs, a burning tree, the Monroe Institute, and healing the son of an elite Washington, D.C. power broker with ties to the White House. 16 years on, the phenomena still visits the Bledsoe family and affects the lives of people who come in contact with them. To outsiders, this can be seen as demonic. But to those willing to keep an open mind, it's a blessing. Don't be surprised if you, the reader, become one of them. Strap in for a wild ride. That's Colonel John B. Alexander. And so this is all about Chris Bledsoe's book. So now that's interesting, huh? Critical Review says Chris has probably been visited officially and unofficially by more governmental types and UFO researchers than any other contactees or experiencers. There's a reason for this. The story Chris tells touches very close to home for many government officials, scientists, and academics who have either had a similar experience themselves or who are aware of some elements in Chris's story that they have either personally seen or experienced before. Officially or unofficially, the Invisible College indeed took notice, and so should you. That was written by Ulm Semivan, former CIA clandestine directorate of operations. So, and there's a lot of other, and then there's the online reviews. Wow, best paranormal book I've ever read. There's not a book that comes close. Somebody else said, read this book cover to cover in 2 days. I loved peering into the life events of Mr. Bledsoe, who is a humble and gracious man. His honesty and humility are refreshing, and you will find yourself rooting him on as he lights his family's redemption after being swindled by some Discovery Channel city slickers and ill-intentioned MUFON morons. You'll instantly fall in love with this book and the protagonist, who is a true gentleman. So be fearless, he tells him. So it's interesting. This is a book I should probably read, and it certainly deals with a topic that we've talked about on this show, but not in any great detail or any kind of great credentials behind the things that we're talking about. We've just discussed this idea of UFOs and God, angelic visitations, demonic visitations, all of these things down through the from ancient history to modern history. Is there correlation to God, or is what they saw they labeled as gods, demons, devils, angels, and everything in between? So you can actually study at the Monroe Institute now, says Steph. Well, you can apply to go in there anyway. Let's see what else we got. When are you going to have Andy Dabbs on? Sarah, I don't know. We were supposed to do that a couple of weeks ago, and it didn't happen. And he's busy, so I'm going to try to get him on to talk about his stuff. And Andy, if you're out there listening to this show, he's usually not. He's usually an early to bed, early to rise type of guy. Makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, as Ben Franklin said. So we'll probably talk about that tomorrow, and I'll bring it up with him, and we'll see when he would like to schedule that. And he does have his own YouTube channel. He's been pouring a lot of his time and effort into that, and he's fixated with making that fantastic. So you can go over and look up Antone, no E at the end, Anton Dabbs, Dabbs, over on YouTube. I can't remember the exact address, but if you look him up, you'll find him. How is John Ward doing? Asks You Don't Know Me, Mom. John is doing well. I'm about as informed as most everybody else, because he and I we haven't talked as much these days. He's really hard to pin down, really hard to get time to talk with him. And it's been that way since he moved back to, well, not back to Sweden, but they went to Sweden. From here, they were living here about, not even 15 minutes from here. And we were working on a book together, and then they ended up getting a farmstead in Sweden, and they go and they do their thing in Egypt. They got the attention of Nat Geo and filmed some episodes for them on things. They had Josh Gates came in and did some filming at their site. Also, Tony Robinson came in and did some filming at their site. And John and I just, it grew quieter and quieter. And so he and I have really just not talked an awful lot. And when we do connect, it seems light and superficial, and then got to rush, got to get off the phone. And so we've gone from every day, all day long, to very little communication. And I think his life is just super busy. And so traveling a lot, Egypt, archaeology, and all the television stuff and all of that. So I can't really answer how John Ward is doing other than I believe that he is cancer free right now. He went through a bout with lung cancer, and that ended just a few months ago, getting all his treatments. And I don't know what he's going through now anymore. So I'm not quite sure. So I think he's doing much better in that respect. So you have a crush on Josh Gates, says Steph. Yeah, he's kind of I think he would be a fun person to have a crush on. Have they gotten down to the oldest layer of that site that they're on? I heard that most of those sites have been rebuilt over several times. Well, I know that they have gone back to, they've gotten to 10,000 BC on that site, prehistoric times, if you will, pre-dynastic Egypt. You're talking, as old as maybe Göbekli Tepe. And I sat on the hillside, one of the rocky hillsides on the the west bank of the Nile River there. And we were walking through there. And remember, their site is a good 23 miles square was the last I had heard. I don't know how accurate that is. I thought I read somewhere that it's twice that big. But when I was there, 23 miles square, and we went hiking out into the desert, looking at ruins that we saw on Google Earth. And I remember being up on the West Bank, and it almost looked like cobblestones up there from the millennia of scattered stones and the rains and the dust storms and the everything that's settling in. So you're walking along what almost feels like a cobblestone surface. And every now and then, and it just raises up out of nowhere, because as you're approaching it, you can see the three-dimensionality are little rings of stones and stone seats and little pits in the stones where they would have put branches to put up tents or coverings. These little circles, they say, date back into that 10,000-year-old period, pre-dynastic Egypt. And this is the time where you see the stone carvings on the walls up there, not the walls of the cliffs that have like herds of giraffe and all kinds of animals and things like that up there, which you don't see there anymore. And we were sitting on one of these stones, and I'm sitting where what would have been a fire pit. And down at my feet, embedded in the sand, were flint knappings. Not as if somebody had sat there thousands of years earlier on that very same rock, with his ass on that rock, napping a flint, probably for a knife or a tool of some kind. And all the shavings, the little nappings were down in the dirt right there, embedded in the dirt. You could dig them out and stuff. They weren't petrified or anything, but, well, it's rock. So it was very interesting. So kind of neat to be sitting there and saying, I'm sitting on the very rock where somebody about 10,000 years ago was sitting here for an afternoon napping off flint. So for arrowheads or spearheads or knives or whatever they were napping the flint for. So anyway, so that's Gebel El Silsila, and that's what happened there. I think what has struck people is that this is the first time that all of these things may come from the same source. You're talking about the UFO and God thing. So, yeah. I've been saying for a long time, I think that was the basis for a lot of science fiction. When I was a kid, Star Trek dealt with the issues of, maybe what ancient humans and ancient life considered to be gods and angels and demons were actually interstellar beings and or aliens. And so it's interesting. Uh, uh, could these, Sarah, what are you saying meh to? There's so many different topics going in there. I'm not sure which one you were reacting to. So, Steph wants to sit back with Josh Gates and throw back some whiskey and pick his brain. Yeah, he would be interesting to do that with, I do believe. So there's a guy that I think has amazed himself at the way his career has skyrocketed. His presence has gone the way it has. I've seen him. He's pretty humble about it, which is good. I love that. Hey, Sean Stroik. He says, hi, Scotty Roberts and Intrepeds. Welcome to the program, Sean. Good to have you here. We have about, only about 20 minutes left of this show on air, and we haven't hit any real topics, mostly because I don't have my topics up anymore. I had things up that I was going to talk about, and then I didn't want to sit here and dig through them all again and reconstruct what I had before. So we're just talking. Those of you on radio, we're just talking. And sometimes I like to just go grab a topic. Like if I go over to my website, scottallenroberts.com, in the upper menu, you hit articles. And you can look at some of the stuff I've written about. And I haven't put anything up here since I wrote something on, let's see. The topics I have up in there that you can click on is, the humanity. That's a political one. I've got the Senenmut connection. Exodus, looking good, but dumb as a rock. My critique of the movie. The rise and fall of the Nephilim. That's the introduction to the book. Science Almighty, kicking out the props. The serpent in alien mythos and subculture. Tuatha De Anunnaki is the title. And The Madness of the Divine, which was my critical review of the movie Noah, the Russell Crowe movie. And then I have, of course, Oh, Captain, My Captain, which is a personal article on personal things that have gone on. But, I look at this and I say, fitting into the topic that Niall is talking about, I see here that this is part of my book, The Rise and Fall of the Nephilim. And this was I believe this was chapter 1, if I'm not mistaken. But since we've got a few minutes, listen to this. This is the way I approached the UFO topic. And remember, when I wrote this book, I was pretty into the ancient alien theory, though I was not thoroughly enamored with it. I thought it had a lot of holes to it, but I also thought it was like a quick salve on a wound kind of explanation for UFOs and religion and God. And I had written that this quote by Henry Poincaré. He said in his book Science and the Hypothesis from 1905, he said, science is built up of facts as a house is built of stones. But an accumulation of facts is no more a science than a heap of stones is a house. Here's the thing about science. We think that we really should be patting ourselves on the back for, what we refer to as our science, yet science isn't the end all and the be all. of everything. Science is the evolving, ever changing thing that we like to hang our hats on certain issues. And science itself likes to declare that science itself is the end all and be all. It likes to puff out its chest and beat its chest and all of that. And yet, science is that thing that's ever evolving and ever moving, because science isn't an exact science. There are some things we can determine scientifically, but that does not necessarily mean that we figured it all out and that science has all the answers, because it doesn't. I was looking for this quote. It's by Freeman Dyson. He said, The public has a distorted view of science because children are taught in school that science is a collection of firmly established truths. But in fact, science is not a collection of truths at all. It's a continuing exploration of mysteries. That's what science is. Science began as really theology and looking to try to find answers to mysteries. Now, I don't think Akhenaten was Anunnaki hybrid. I don't. I think he was just a guy, a normal guy. I don't know what's with the elongated head and all of that, but I don't think he was anything out of the ordinary, other than maybe he was a weird duck. Hypothesis and theory, Sean. That's my opinion on that, Mom. But I would have to, I could dig into that a little bit, and we could do a little bit of more research on that particular topic. And I think Akhenaten was, he was a normal guy. I think he had himself displayed in this caricature type of fashion. You remember, he was the father of King Tut, and had what was considered to be one of the most beautiful wives, queen wives. And so in Nefertiti. And his statues are pretty weird, and his images are pretty weird. He has a quarry at Gebel El Silsila, John and Maria's site in Egypt. And his quarry, it shows several sphinxes that were made for him, that were roughed out on site, and then they transport them like big stone down the river. And there's several sphinxes sitting there in the sand, been there for 3,000 years. And one of them has the head pushed off of it and knocked off. And he has up on the cliff face, there's a door with a beautiful door frame carved into the stone all around it, and hieroglyphs up there and so on. And it's up off the ground about, it would be the equivalent of maybe 4 stories up off the ground. And there's all kinds of things around that site there. And he was a normal dude. Maybe a little whack, but he was a normal dude. But in this Science Almighty, I start writing, and I said, so I have this pile of stones, each one representing a scientific fact that could be used to build a solid foundation for what I'll call the house of the origins of humanity. Yet they remain in an unconstructed heap, because while each stone might be individually factual, they can be loosely mortared together only by hypothesis, built on the presupposition that humans evolved from lesser forms of primates, who in turn evolved from some emergent aquatic species, who themselves evolved from primordial slime. And now, while these individual facts may indeed comprise my pile of stones, they cannot construct an unshakable foundation, for they lack concrete coherence. This is science. That's what I see in science. Science is, don't get me wrong, I think science is efficacious. It's how we figure things out. But it also is something that lacks coherence. The house remains in the architectural phase from my pile of stones, because we know where we want to put the stones. We're just not sure how they all fit together. And that's the issue we have with science, making it work. Science as we know it is defined as a branch of knowledge or study of the physical or material world, dealing with a body of facts and or truths systematically arranged, showing the operation of general laws gained through observation and experimentation, reflecting a precise application of said fact and or principles. And science is also the observation, the identification, description, experimental investigation, and theoretical explanation of phenomena, restricted to a class of natural phenomena. So while science is continually uncovering facts as to variant species that on a hypothetical level demonstrate a mutation within the species, they still lack that definitive link that results in an exclamation of Eureka! This does not nullify the facts, that metaphoric pile of stones, but it clearly wreaks havoc with the proposed hypothesis. So, to continue following my House of Humanity construct, science has proven that there are 5 characteristics that separate man from other hominids: a large neocortex, bipedality, reduced anterior dentition, with molar dominance, material culture, and unique sexual and reproductive behavior. But science has yet to demonstrate that the discovered variants are actual linkages within the human species. All we know of a certainty is that scientists have uncovered numerous forms of fossilized prehistoric skeletal remains, leading them to conclude that they're substantiating the line of human evolutionary ascendancy, albeit with many gaps in the progression. Therefore, no real linkages at all. But they're pretty damn sure that they're correct in their hypothesis. So what science and its practitioners have demonstrated is that there exist fossils that provide incontrovertible evidence that various hominid species walked the earth in our primordial past. What they have hypothesized is that they are all linked to human evolution. Even the DNA findings, at best, when they can find it, are interpolated from what scientists think maybe appears to somewhat be sort of connected to human DNA. And they make the stretch to linkage based solely on the educated hope, quote unquote, that it is probably so, despite not having evidence to make it so without a shadow of a doubt. And isn't that the very same way religious believers cling to their particular versions of God? Science has this love affair with itself, loves to puff out its chest, declare for itself, as do many religions. Yet with the last 150 years of research since Darwin's Origin of Species, 1859, by the way, their accumulated facts have still not gotten them past their original leaping off point. Their educated guess that all these finds are somehow linked, demonstrating an unbroken chain of evolutionary mutation resulting in modern man. So while science has made... Hey, Michelle Cannon-Free. I just saw you out of the corner of my eye over there. Good to see you. Nice to have you. So while science has made great advances in the quest for the identification of linkages in the line of human evolution, science has also been forced to make quantum leaps of faith in order to adhere to pre-established hypotheses. And of course, they wouldn't call it faith, but that's what it is in the practical ground-level outcome. So in a very real sense, science, and I use the term science here as representative of the accumulated collective of thought, hypothesis, research, and conclusion embodied in a single entity or word, rose up to find and identify fact and has established its own truth, quote unquote, in a sometimes overt, sometimes unwitting, desire to do an end run around spiritual and religious belief. Spirituality existed long before established science, but somewhere at the very roots of understanding, science kicked in as soon as someone raised their head and said, I know the stars are the placental remains of the great goddess in the sky birthing the sun and moon, but is that just a story or is there something more? So there's this great conflict. Science versus religion versus science versus faith. There's existed a conflict between science and spirituality, reason versus faith, since the beginning of recorded history, and it seems as if that fight will continue until time itself comes to an end. For many in the scientific fields, there's a need to eradicate all that is not fact, including faith-based spirituality or its organized religious practices, as well as a denial, at least on an intellectual level, that there is some powerful divine creative force at play in the universe. And according to evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, scientists never need to rely on faith, at least, quote, not in the sense of faith as meaning belief in something for which there is no evidence, end quote. And Dawkins is a self-acclaimed atheist, and he says that any expression of faith on his part is based on his confidence in the scientific method alone. And in agreement with Dawkins is the pop cultural skeptic, now late, James Randi, who by trade is a stage magician and scientific skeptic. And he's made a notable name for himself out of the debunking of the paranormal and the pseudoscientific, which is not in and of itself a bad thing. But Randi says, when hailing to his experience of being tossed out of Sunday school as a kid, I am an atheist, tried and true. So since then, he's dedicated his life and his career to finding ways to prove that science is the end-all and be-all when it comes to the great controversies surrounding the big questions of faith, religion, and the great mysterious unknowns of life and the universe. And I like what Carl Sagan said, and I had written about it here. He talked about how his parents instilled in him two of the very basic things in his life. One is the absolute need for the scientific method, and two is to never lose a sense of wonder about the universe. Now, my radio just shut off. My connection to the stream. I don't know why. It's not supposed to do that until for another minute and a half. But it's off, so we're apparently off the air over on the radio station. I don't know why. It said it stopped. So those of you who are on the radio, you can't hear me right now. Those of you sitting here in the chat room and watching the simulcast, you're still here, I think. So, radio audience, good night. Let's go out for a little break and we'll come back with the Captain's Cabin. For a little bit anyway. Let's see what everybody wants to talk about and what we're doing. So for now, everybody else, live long and prosper. Sit tight.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid Radio Broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel. And also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here.
Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep,
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave.
Hey, welcome to the Captain's Cabin, everyone. And this is those of you who are new here, this is the after show. And a little more informal. You can call up the link. We can talk a little bit. It goes from, it's taken on its own life, and we've gone roughly an hour after every show. We started out, it was 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and and sometimes it's been 2 hours and plus. So I loved those marathon sessions with Uncle Dave and with Professor Bauer and Uncle Dave and everybody else. Matthew Sainsbury, I haven't seen him in a long time, so not sure what happened to Matthew Sainsbury, but he used to like to call in. And Sarah, of course, always called in. And so we'd try to discuss the topics of the show, take it a little bit further, and sometimes totally different topics altogether that may have been related to the show, but not part of the show. So, yeah. So we had a lot of fun with the captain's cabin, especially with Uncle Dave. Yeah, I agree, Michelle. When he was on the panel, which was almost every night, if you remember right, Uncle Dave was here. This was his thing. He liked to come here late at night. Yeah, I miss him, Sean. It's tough. If you heard that recording, I know all my regular listeners have heard me play it over and over again on the show or in the captain's cabin, but you can definitely hear Dave's voice say, "I miss you too." And in between the words "you" and "too," there's a sound from the background in the device. So you hear him say, "I miss you too," and there's that big sound that comes in between, and then he says it again after I exclaim about it, and I said, "Did you all hear that?" And he says it again, "I miss you too." Or he says, it's a little more blurred. He says, "I love you too," or "I miss you too." Let's do this. I'm going to play that just so you can hear it. Everybody listen to this. Turn up your volume or put on a headset and listen to this. I'll play it a couple of times. You can hear the two different points where Dave talks. And the second time you'll hear it, it sounds like he says, "I miss you too," 2 times. But it might be something else in there too. "I miss her, I love you too." Here we go. I'm going to play this and listen to this very closely.
Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep,
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave.
So did you hear that the second time? He said it a second time. Listen very closely again. One of these days, I'll just call it up and I'll slow it down and I'll see if I can figure out what he's saying there. But try one more time. Listen, he says it twice, though. Here we go. One last time. 17 seconds.
Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep,
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave.
So there you go. You can make of that what you will. I've had good friends who are skeptics that have said, "Well, explain to me how a voice of a person who's died can talk to you on a little box like that, and maybe I'll believe it." And I said, "I can't explain it. I couldn't tell you why it works. All I know is it's there." And I said, one of the things that you have to take into consideration is that it came right on the tail end of what I said. So, and it was definitely Dave's voice. So there you go. That's why I play that. I add that in the break between the captain's cabin and the radio show. I play that every night because I miss having him here. So, and you know, my eyes are doing weird things, but as I'm talking about this, as we played that the second time, right here out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow move. Now, I don't know if it was a shadow. I don't make things up. I don't have to make shit up. Now, life is weird enough, but it was right here. I'm going to turn my screen, and right over here to the side, between that bookshelf and Dean Winchester there, right there, I saw something dark move across. But I see that down here all the time, down in the studio here. So I see stuff like that every day. And I don't know if it's my eyes because I've had surgery on them and they're weird and they're fluttering a little bit and will be for a few weeks yet till they're fully healed. But it's weird. Yeah, I heard that, Niall, the female voice that came in between you and two. And it was like, like that. It had that sound to it. I don't know what that was. So Dean might freak you out. Yeah, he's wearing my MAGA hat. If you saw. There you go. Here, we'll tip it up. There you go. Yeah, he's back over there wearing the MAGA hat. So, in the studio, I have some nice additions over here I can show you. I took out the big overstuffed chairs because I don't like them, and I put in this table over here. Let's see if we can turn this enough where you can see the table over here. And this table, it's got some of Rainey's tumblers on it. But this table is, I just had clients in here the other day. And we all sat down here at the table around here. And it's pretty neat. So I like this a lot better in here. I can see if we can, there we go. Well, that's more of the studio, but you get the idea. So there's plenty of room here. I'm way up here on the back side of my desk right here, but I could walk all the way back over here. This is the back of the studio, and we got about 10 feet before we hit the desk. So, but that's a nice addition in here. You know what would work if I turn this on? There you go. Now you can see it a little better. Not that that's anything spectacular and glamorous and wildly amazing, but you know, there it is. There's the back end of the studio, and that's the doorway over there to the studio. So if I can get this to cooperate with me. Didn't want to tip up. I had thought of maybe doing the radio show from here. Put my microphone all the way back over here and do the radio show from right here. There's Uncle Dave's coat. Oops. Seen it reverse up there. Uncle Dave's coat is hanging there. That's something that Rowan said that freaks her out a little bit, seeing that coat back there. She said, I don't think Uncle Dave likes having that coat there. So, I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, there you go. I'm going to turn off the big lights. There we go. And we'll turn us back around. So some of that, maybe some of that wasn't very hearable. But somebody would say, what kind of radio show is this where you're showing us around your office? It's my radio show. That's what it is. I can do what I want. And frankly, right now we're not on radio. We're just doing a live stream. So there it is. There we go. I do have a lot of collectible stuff. I would hate to move again. You can see why I hate moving. So, Niall's calling in. Let's get Niall in here. Niall, how you doing, brother?
Hey, man, how are you?
I am good. What's going on? What's shaking?
Not a whole lot. Just a couple of things that you talked about tonight. You know, towards the end, particularly the voice of Dave coming through, reminded me of something that I mentioned previously. You know, the UFO connection and God and stuff like that. Do you remember the guy who wrote The Exorcist, William Peter Blatty?
Yes.
He's dead now. I think he died in 2011. But he was a staunch Catholic. But he also, if you read The Exorcist novel and his sequel, there's a large section in the novel, in both novels, that is taken up with this obsession with recording voices from the other side. And his theory, he became quite obsessed with this. And the guy who originally directed The Exorcist, William Friedkin, was like, we're not going to put this stuff in the movie. This is just too out there. So there was an entire section where this doctor became obsessed with recording voices, just letting a tape recorder run. Something about the radio waves and the magnetic transference of the voice onto tape that could only be done in that particular way. He had a particular experience of this. He used to mess around as a kid, apparently, and get some alarming results.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that when I listened to the second time you played that snippet, there was a definite kind of transference. There was somebody else's voice just cut through Dave's right at the end.
Yes.
And that wasn't interrupting him, or that wasn't like a glitch.
I think they were
like
two different voices in this,
yes,
occupying the same frequency that maybe not even aware of each other. Yeah,
something like that. Of course, William Peter Blatty, because he was such a successful author and director, and very highly regarded. These theories of his were put down as the ravings of a madman. You're gonna
right.
Yes, he used to sit up all night and record, and he played this stuff back. And of course, it's like anything else. You hear what you want to hear. Sometimes you play something back. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? That sounded like this. And a lot of the phraseology that he put into the Exorcist and the follow-up novel Legion were based on there was a famous dream sequence in Legion, Exorcist 3, and a lot of the voices that came through kept saying things like, "We wait here," or "Here we stay," or "Hospital," or
it's those simple little single, double, triple word.
Yeah.
Things,
We hear, we wait. We there's a lot of we stuff going on, and then occasionally there'll be a voice will cut through and say, I don't know, or I'm not sure, or
where am I? Help me.
All of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he wrote a lot of this down, and there was he put a lot of this into the second movie. If you ever get a chance to watch it, it's well worth it, with George C. Scott. In a famous dream sequence where everyone is kind of wandering around, and he used to get, we are processed. He heard this processed, hospital. We wait, or they take us. All this kind of stuff in short little snippets on these tapes, and he gathered it together, and eventually there's a section towards the end of the reissue of The Exorcist, where he talks about this and said, I had to take that out of the book because people thought I was going mad. I thought I was going mad. He says, I can't really put this in the movie.
But now we get this stuff all the time.
All the time, yeah. But there is some connection with, it can only be transferred somehow. Obviously, that was transferred onto your phone, but it can only be transferred somehow through some kind of technology.
Yes.
In other words, it can't be transferred directly into your head, or
you can't hear it audibly with your naked ears, so to speak.
Yes, it's not going to be in the air, So when Dave had spoken to you, he had to have a medium to speak to you through, and that was the phone. And in William Peter Blatty's case, it was the tape recorder, or this is going back to the 80s or whatever it was, So yeah, I mean that kind of struck me.
I've had some EVPs like that skeptical friends of mine, they don't hear it, can't hear it, and I don't know if that is that a psychological thing that happens. It's like they told the stories of when the Native American tribes first saw the big sailing vessels coming to America 500 years ago. And some of them saw them as clouds, pillars of clouds because they couldn't see the ships because it had no reference in their brain. And I would think that the brain would pick up whatever's there and just you wouldn't know how to interpret it, but they couldn't see it. And then there were those other stories I've heard like that, where I wonder if my friend who is a skeptic, because he doesn't want to hear the EVP and doesn't accept that it's real, doesn't allow himself to hear. Because I had a couple of EVPs from the old ranch house where Rainey and I moved in out onto the ranch in 2008. And we had done, before we moved into the house, we'd done an investigation with some friends of ours, a whole group of friends that were part of a group of investigators. And they came out and we picked up some very interesting EVPs.
Yeah.
And my friend Jim couldn't hear them. Yet they were as clear as day to us. I could turn it on after not listening to it for a year and hear it immediately. One was very embedded in the white noise, just the natural hiss of the background.
Mhm.
And it was up in my daughter's room. And it was a child's voice. And it said, at least it sounded like it. And it said, with this tone of voice, it went, "Get out right now." Like, this is my room. Don't be in here, kind of a tone. And it was very buried in the white noise. Yet I found it. I tried not to tamper with it because I wanted it to be natural. I said, now listen very closely to this. I played it over him 30 times. He could never hear it. There was another one in the basement of that house, which is kind of a creepy old basement down there, old ranch house, and dank and dark. And in the back room, we had asked, if anybody's here, the typical questions, would you like to talk to us? And we got two voices. One was a male voice he sounded to me like a guy who would have had a stub of a cigar in his mouth, and I picture him in my head as balding and kind of overweight and kind of New York kind of a look to him. And I got that visual in my head because he goes, you hear me ask the question on the tape, then you hear his voice go, "Fuck you," like that. And then a woman right on the heels of that says, "I already told them," clear as a bell, type A. And so we don't know who was down there. Fuck you.
Yeah.
I already told them. And, so we had stuff like that.
And I think that's fascinating. And also, I firmly believe that there is something to that. I think that a lot of these experiences can be addressed to the individual, right?
Yes.
Or picked up by an individual. That's why somebody else in the party may not hear it. So sometimes it's random stuff that goes past. Sometimes it's very specific. I get the impression at times that sometimes they're not allowed to speak, or they get a very limited time to speak because everyone is crowding together, through this frequency. So when Dave, your voice came through to him, and he immediately replied, but he was getting interference straight away, and I think it's something like that.
Yes, and we hear an awful lot of that kind of thing. I was going to do a little demo here. Let me plug this thing in, and I'll just show you on. This is and I've talked about it online here before, or on the show before. I gotta plug pardon the noise. I gotta pull a cable out of here and plug it in. But there is a little an app, and it's very commercialized on the It's sold and you buy it for like $9 or $10 or something like that. And this app has it's called Necro something. Hold on, I got to plug in because I'm almost out of battery on my phone. I'll plug this in and I'll play you an example. But it comes across with all these different voices, and some of them you deliberately ask the question: Is this all programmed into this for effect? It's an entertainment. They've got to put a disclaimer on it for entertainment purposes only. But I saw this with the guys on YouTube, the Mind Seed, and their investigations, and they suggest using this, and it's really good. And so let me plug this in, and I'll give you a quick demo on the thing. Hang on. My plugs are, of course, all on the other side here. Is this a USB or is it it's a USB? I can plug it in right here. All right, hang on. As I get things going here. Plug that in. I just want to make sure my phone doesn't burn out of battery as I'm doing this.
Sure, take your time.
And so this is what I was using when I picked up Dave's voice. All right. So I have this. Let me find it. What it's called again. It's Necro something. Necrophonic. Phonic. Necrophonic. And it's got that up in that upper corner there with the pentacle is its logo. And I turn this on. If it lets me. There we go. And there's not much to it. It just comes on, and you can decide what mode you're going to put it in. It comes up like this. It's got, that's the only screen for the whole program. Start, echo, reverb, white noise, and it's got a bar for intensity. So if I were to, let's see. See, it's on and it's not. Oh, start. Here we go. Here's what it sounds like. And it's a lot of gibberish. But
it sounds very familiar, though, doesn't it?
It does. And if we don't like to use this equipment in the house so much, but if I were to use it and I would ask you, if Dave is around, if he'd like to talk, here's your chance, Dave, for about 10 seconds.
That was a male voice, came in straight away at the beginning.
So you get a lot of this stuff. Diana Atkinson, she's a fellow ghost investigator, very good at what she does. And I'm going to turn this off because I don't really like to use this in the house. Rainey doesn't.
I think the only time where it gets a little bit silly when they're recording voices is, with some of these TV shows when they're in a 14th century French castle. And they expect them to speak English back to them, stuff like that.
I've heard two sides to that. I've heard that they will speak in language that you understand because it's not physical, earthly language. It's spiritual. And so it's more on a spirit level. And so you are perceiving it or hearing it, no matter what language they're speaking, and it's coming through as language you'd understand. But I also heard some good stuff from some very good people at Lep Castle in Ireland. And Sean, what's his name? The old guy with the beard. I don't know if he's still there. But I think it was Barry Fitzgerald was telling me this story. When they were there, they were picking up voices, and then they found that the voices were speaking an archaic Gaelic, and which is something that would have been around 1,000 years ago. And they got full phrases that they were able to interpret by somebody who spoke Gaelic.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the few times I'd heard something like that.
I think personally, I would disagree with the first synopsis that the language is somehow translated, so that the hearer can listen to it. I think it makes much more sense that that whatever voices come through would come through in a native language, from long before, or in the present, or passing through. So in other words, I think there's something sad about it. I find that a lot of these voices that are recorded, sometimes they sound desperate, sometimes they sound they need to be heard somehow. And I don't think there is the possibility of changing the language, so the person can understand.
I don't know how it
I
works.
think it's just like if their voice is, if their name is called or something, they get a chance to just pass through, and they get a second. And if you're really to do a deep dive on this, just let a tape recorder run. I did it
Yeah.
many times myself, and some of the stuff I've heard is just kind of mind blowing.
I've done that.
Um,
I did that with my computer, with the recording application on my computer. And there wasn't a lot of white noise, so it was very pure recording sound. And we didn't pick up an awful lot. But I know that I had asked, and I recently talked about this on the show, I had asked about my great-grandfather. And it's a picture of him I posted a couple of years ago. An old photo I have of him that he's wearing a suit, and he's got a very dapper fedora on his head. And the picture was taken in like 1925 or 26. And so 100 years ago. And God, it's crazy when you think of that. That's a century ago now. But I had asked, and I was sitting alone, and I said, I never really, I never knew you. He was murdered in 1926. Somebody didn't like his politics and shot him in the chest with a shotgun. And so that's that story. So he died 100 years ago. And I said, I never knew you. I said, but if you want to talk to me, if you can hear my voice, if you're even out there to connect with, I said, you could talk through this. And I left the computer running for a little bit. And when I listened back, the only thing I heard, and it wasn't much, I'm looking at the sound line on the sound program, and it's a straight line. Then in one spot, there was a little blip, and then it moved. And so I zeroed in on that blip. I blew it way up, and it was a little thing, and I enhanced. I listened to it, then I enhanced it. I made it louder, and it was a male voice going, "Hey, kid," just like that, and that's all I got. Hey, kid. And it was like, was that my great-grandfather? I don't know.
I think, yeah. I mean, I'm putting my logical hat on now, and I'm going to kind of not segue, but I'm going to introduce somebody who's written about his studies on people who are dying. His guy is called Peter Fenwick, and he wrote a book a number of years ago called The Art of Dying. It's very hard to talk to people who are dying. He's talking about people who are in nursing homes and hospices, who are on the verge of dying, who have terminal illnesses of various kinds. But because of ethics, you can't actually be there. They won't allow you to fill them in their dying moments, obviously,
Yeah.
But he interviewed all the carers and all the family members. And a lot of them said that they could hear things, at times there was a radio playing, and they would say, "Yeah, did you hear that?" They would sit up and
Yeah.
yeah, or somebody would be on the phone and says, "Hey, did you hear that voice?" And they're like, oh, "What
Right.
voice?" I'm talking. They can't even hear who's on the phone. And there was many instances. This guy, he's very elderly, Peter Fenwick, but he's very well respected kind of neurobiologist, and he kind of neuropsychiatry, and he kind of changed things throughout his career. But he was very into this idea of snippets being recorded in various ways. It's almost like it's if in the afterlife, upon dying or near to death, there are many people who would be close to the dying who are trying to reach out to them, but they only get a very short period of time to do that. It's like
Right.
it's like you twirl the dial on an old radio. It's like between stations, and it's like they're desperate to send a message.
Yeah.
So it's not like this whole phenomena, and I do consider this a phenomena that is probably as important, a phenomena I can think of regarding the afterlife,
Yes.
and what happens there, and also there's a kind of Fenwick says that there is a sense of urgency that people who are dying and
Yes.
they're receiving messages. There's a sense of urgency that comes through, that a message needs to be heard, but it's not always clear how it's heard.
Right.
But people who die comfortably hear the message, and they go to sleep and they die. People who don't hear the message clearly die in anguish, because the message isn't clear, or the message is scrambled, or something. So there is something that happens with the dying, in the dying moment, that a message is sent and received. Sometimes it's understood.
That's interesting.
Sometimes it's not. So that's a slight segue from what we were talking about, but it's within the same realm. But at the same time, a lot of the time it's recorded on a device, on a mobile phone, on a nearby radio, from outside. Did you hear that? Sometimes it might be bird song. A lot of times the amount of people who've said, "Did you hear what the bird said? There's a bird that landed on the window and said this to me," etc., etc., etc.
Right.
So it's it is kind of fascinating.
It's incredibly
but again,
fascinating.
very hard to prove, very hard to pin down. But there are serious people who are put a lot of time into this, and I suppose science. This guy is trying to be very scientific. So can this be repeated over and over? And he says yes. It was repeated over and over again. A bird arriving, a radio, a phone, a message, over and over and over again, with people who are passing through. Sometimes they had a good death. Sometimes they had a hard death. So there's a lot to that.
Claudette says many times in nursing homes, people talk to someone no one else can see right before leaving their body.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fenwick talks about people appearing outside the window, people shadows and smoke and misty. The carers or the family will describe these things, out of the blue, and just before dying, somebody will all of a sudden become very lucid.
Yes.
Or will wake up all of a sudden and sit up and say something. But the conversation doesn't seem to be directed towards the family. It seems to be directed to something else.
Yes.
And then they lie down and die.
Now, it's interesting, the story I've told a couple of times on here about the day that before Uncle Dave died in the morning. The afternoon we were up there at the hospital, and he was non-responsive. Of course, they had him on the breathing apparatus, and and he looked very peaceful. He didn't have the big bags under the eyes, and his hair was combed and all that, and he looked actually very clean and pristine, just with he had the tube going down his throat. And I had a friend who is very close to Dave and could not make it down that day. We had all just learned about it, and she asked if I could go in and see him again and she wanted to sing him a song over the phone. And this is Dana, and Dana is an amazing singer, very operatic in her style, but can also, simplify that style too. And so she wanted to sing to him. And so I went back into the critical department, and I could see Dave in his bed through the big sliding glass door to his private room there, and there he was, just like I had seen him a half an hour earlier, and with his head to the side and the breathing apparatus, and looking very peaceful. And there was a woman that was in a hijab and native-looking garb to her heritage, her homeland. I'm assuming Middle East, and very short and very thick accent. And she had been there when we went in before, and I came back. Now she was the only one in the department, and everybody else was gone. And I said, I'd like to just go back in and see my friend Dave for a few minutes. And she said, oh, he is not there. And I said, and I was trying to be polite. And I was like, that's him right there. I see him. I said, that's him. He's laying there in his bed. Oh, that is not him. I said, well, who is it then? And she said, oh, that is someone else. And I said, well, look. And she never did look at him. And I said, well, if that's not him, where is he now? I said, did they move him? And I'm humoring her a bit, but I'm trying to figure her out because I'm looking at him. And I said, have they moved him? I'm tapping her brain. Like, do you know he's been moved or something? You're not even looking. And she said, oh, he is. And this is the key point based on something you just said. And something that Claudette said. She said, oh, no, they did not move him. She said, but he is over in another department. He's visiting someone over there. And I said, well, what department is that? Well, if you go to the end of the hall and turn right and you walk this way for a mile, whatever it is, and at the Mayo Clinic, she said, you'll find him over there. And I said, I can't just go over there and say hello. And she said, that's not him. He's not. She never told me no. She just said, that's not him. He's not there. Okay. So out of protocol and politeness, I didn't just barge through and go back there. I walked out in the hall and I saw Sam down the hall, and I put my hands up. I said, I don't know what's going on. And by the way, yes, Claudette, that's my great-grandfather right there, Stephen Foster Roberts. But so I walked down the hall, and I'm talking to Sam as I'm coming toward. I said, I don't know what's going on. And then a man in a suit comes out from around the corner, and he says, sir, a problem of any kind? He says, I'm a chaplain here. And I told him what had happened, and he said, let me go see what's going on. And I will bet you dimes to donuts, he's probably faced more stuff like this. That's weird. So he went back in there, and then he came back out a couple minutes later and says, come on in, through the back door of the department. We came in. It's totally empty. The woman's not even there now. And we walked in and we saw Dave, and Dana sang for him and so on. But
and this woman
never
was
saw
she
her
a member of was she a member of staff or just a
I
civilian?
thought she was, because she was there. She checked us in the first time when the department was full of doctors and nurses all behind the desk. There had to be a dozen people in there. Now it's a half hour, 45 minutes later. We go back to nobody's in there. Nobody except her. And then we go back in again. Nobody's there. She's even gone. We never saw her the rest of the day. And I think John Potter, Dave's older brother, who's been on the show, Uncle John, we call him, he said he didn't see her the next day either when Dave had passed the next morning.
Well,
So,
do you know what, Scotty? That is Fenwick writes about stories that are precisely what you just described. People come up and they say, "Oh, this person isn't there; they're gone now," or and they say where you go there, and the next thing the person is gone. Is it a member of staff? They don't know. They don't see them again.
yeah, no, who that was.
That is, don't know who that was. Yeah, so that was obviously a guide of some sort.
Yeah,
guiding the soul or the spirit away.
yes,
And they didn't really have the time or weren't in a position to explain it to you specifically what was going on. But because you asked at that particular time, they tried to explain as best they could. But like that, you never saw them again. Who was that
right,
person? Is it a
right.
member of staff?
Who was that?
Why was she telling me to go down the hallway? Why was she telling me that this
Why was
guy
she
isn't
sending me
here?
to another department and telling me that Dave was down there? It was like I'm thinking there's some kind of language barrier here because I'm saying, well, he's right there, and she says, oh no, he's gone. He's down there talking to some. But how can he be down there talking to somebody else when he's here? He says he's visiting someone down there. Maybe he was.
And yeah, and there is a word that Fenwick uses, and it's confusion. He says that there's a lot of confusion in the dying process. A lot of things overlap each other during the dying process.
Yeah.
People will appear sometimes. They might be particularly connected with the person who's passing, or they might be just connected with somebody else who's passing. Or, in other words, you get wrapped up. And he also says that trauma and stress and closeness, a strong emotional bond, can cause this to manifest itself as well. So it is extremely unusual, but it's well worth paying attention to.
Yeah. By the way, let me say to Claudette, that's very interesting. No, he was American. Our family had been here since the early 1700s. So, he was American, Welsh heritage, just like me, my great grandfather. I'd be curious if you are connecting with him. I'd love to ask him about what he did, and nobody knew exactly. It said that he was a garage man, was all the old papers say. Now, I don't know what that meant. That mean he was a mechanic? Did he run a garage, own a garage? I've wanted to ask him without any offense if he hears me or understands. Was he into illegalities? Was he like the local small town organized crime? Was it because those questions came up? Because a psychic I know very well said something about coins and money, and I don't mean that to ask.
And this is the man who this is the man who died violently. Yes.
Yes,
he was
this
shot.
is my great grandfather. He was
Yes.
on in November of 1926 on election day. Some young upstart got into an argument with him. They were all sitting in what they called the post office, which also sold soda pops. They weren't at a bar, and they were drinking soda pops, sitting discussing the election. A bunch of the guys with the postmaster general of the town, postmaster of the town, and they're all sitting there, and he's sitting up on the countertop drinking a soda pop, and the one guy was drunk. He was drinking off of either his own flask or whatever. A young kid, 18 to 20 years old in there, and knew him, got into a big argument with him, left, in the postmaster told him to go home. You're drunk. Go home. Come back when you're sober. And the kid came back a little while later with a shotgun, and but from the stories I've heard, my great grandfather here, Stephen Roberts, he was sitting on the countertop, and he jumped down, and he said to this kid's name was Aubrey. He says, "Aubrey, put that damn gun down." And he took a step toward him, and Aubrey shot him in the chest. And then they threw him in the back of the bed of a pickup. Think rural Ohio, small town, 100 years ago, 1920s. And they had to drive him like a half an hour to get him to the hospital in the bed of a pickup truck, and he died about 3 hours later. But this kid then walked out on the street, and he's got a shotgun in his hand over his head, and he's saying, "I just shot that goddamn Republican Roberts," and that's what he's yelling. And this all came out in the trial. It was in the newspapers, and they were saying what all the witnesses were saying. And so he got something like life in prison, and this would have been 1927 when he got sentenced. And then 14 years later, the breakout of World War II, like a lot of prisoners, he was given the option to stay in prison or his sentence reduced if he would serve in the military. And so they pulled him. He went and fought in the war in Europe, came home, became, I don't know what he did for a living, but he became the church organist, I heard. And he died, I think, of old age in like mid 1980s. This guy lived too. But yeah, that was so. Claudette.
So is it possible that it was that guy who was saying to you, "Hey kid," you know?
Yeah, I left Professor Bauer. I don't know if you heard any of this, but I had left couple of years ago. I left the computer recording, and I had tried to reach out to him. I said, "I never knew who you were. I never met you. You died 100 years ago." And I said, "If you're out there, I'd love to talk to you. And if you have anything to say." And when I look back at the recording later, it was just a long straight line, and it had one little blip on there. And I opened it up, and I blew it up, and I played it, and you could hear a man's voice say, "Hey, kid." And that's all I heard. The rest was total silence. And so sitting in my office, where would that sound have come from? Claudette says he didn't understand what happened to him. Yeah, I don't think he ever regained consciousness. I think he was shot in the chest, lower chest, not right in the heart. And
it was probably the last thing he ever said.
Probably before he died. That goddamn gun.
You know, I mean, if something is going to be recorded,
yep.
You know, it would be something like that, you would imagine. But again, it can only come through on a device that is capable of recording these things.
Claudette,
they don't just appear in the air.
She's picking up some things from him. She says, and she said, "I felt the argument was very quick. Yeah, I think he jumped off the counter and got shot. Boom, it was over." And there was something about a coin that somebody had picked up, and she said he had a coin in his pocket.
Yeah. He may possibly have said, "Hey, kid," during that altercation. Very quickly.
Maybe. Well, this was more a thing of, it wasn't a command like, "Hey, kid," like drop that gun. It was a, "Hey, kid."
Yeah.
Like an acknowledgement, a pleasant acknowledgement of me is what it sounded like, the tone.
Yeah.
So this is very interesting. I always, no offense to you personally, Claudette. I'm always skeptical of psychics or mediums when they say that they've made a connection. Not because I disbelieve, but because, it's all subjective until something is really comes through. And so this is interesting, though. You picked up on a couple of things.
I don't know.
You're welcome, by the way.
Hey, Robert, how are you doing?
Good to be here.
I'm not sure whether you just jumped in, because we've been on for but 40 minutes now at this stage, talking about various things. So I don't know whether we started. talking about
I
Bledsoe's
just
book.
finished dinner with a friend, and
Yeah.
I picked up my phone and looked for notifications. I said, "Oh, Scotty's on. Let's see what's going on." And the only piece that I've caught was it sounded to me like it was something about bootlegging, time traveling, disembodied spirits.
Oh, bootlegging.
Bootlegging. Possibly, yes.
Did I say
Anything's
that?
possible.
That's
I
it.
don't
Or
think
Heard
you
so.
something.
picked up,
There was something
I-
about
I-
liquor.
picked up on that. You're saying
That's
psychically?
the
Intuitively?
sense that came to me was
Ah,
I was passing through and I was trying to get. I thought, well, do I want to get on? I don't know. Yeah, I had Niall and I exchanged some messages last night. I saw he was on. I said, oh shit, I'll talk to the
Huh.
chap over in the land of Scott. But then as I was listening, that's what it came to me was bootlegging,
well,
time
it's
traveling,
interesting
disembodied spirits.
that one of the thoughts that had been presented to me, it was you remember Motherella, who used to do stuff on Rocky's show. She's the one who came up with some stuff a couple of years ago about this man, Stephen Foster Roberts, and it rings a bell, Claudette, that you said I feel serious burning. There was bad anger in one of them. She had asked me if I knew if there had been any kind of bad blood between him and the guy who shot him. And like I say, my grandfather at this point would have been right around 30 to 32 years old in this photo, which was taken probably weeks to months before he was killed. And the other kid was 18 to 20-year-old kid, who, when the police went out to pick him up at his house, seemed to be now think of the outback of Ohio. You're getting out of Cincinnati, going to the east, and think of it 100 years ago. And think of hill people, hillbillies, that Appalachian feel. The police went out there and they said, Aubrey, we got to talk to you. And he's like, and he came over. He's very personable. Yeah, I shot Roberts. Yeah, of course I did. And he was like, didn't think he had done anything wrong. We were in an argument and I shot him. He needed to be shot. Well, you're going to have to come with us, Aubrey.
Arguments were settled so much easier and differently back then,
I
right?
know. Yeah, he was very young, Claudette. You're right. And so, I think it would be very interesting to be able to connect with him intuitively, psychically, mediumship-wise, just because I want to know. Want to ask?
Well, you've done seance before.
I think you
Scotty,
should.
right?
I think you should try that experiment again, Scotty, because my feeling is that it has to be related.
Oh, this experiment?
Yes, with your great grandfather, I mean, and
I should.
the Hey Kate thing, and
I
see
should.
if you can expand upon that, and whether that was coming from his perspective or the person. who shot
Speaking
him,
of
or
that,
how he felt right then, as he died. You know?
I'll be on one, said Claudette. On one of these devices, Claudette, the app. It'd be very interesting to see what you would pick up. But it reminds me of there was another time. I don't know if I ever talked about this. There was somebody named Lynn Sutherland. I don't know if any of you encounter her along the way. She used to frequent. I don't know if she came into the show so much, but saw a lot of her. Yeah, because when I did stuff with Rocky and stuff with Jeff, she used to come into that all the time. She's the one who hired me and flew me out to paint the little mural on her in a nook in her living room of Saint Michael, the Archangel, not Saint Michael, Michael the Archangel. And she flew me out to Washington State and put me up for a couple days and paid me very well to paint this mural of this character. And then we just kind of lost contact. I don't think she liked my politics after a while. And this was, when was I out there? I was out there January of 2017 was when I was out there and painted that mural. I haven't talked to her much since then, but she had done a reading for me once. Not even a reading. just picking up like Claudette is doing here. And she's a very quiet psychic. She's a very quiet woman, middle-aged, and she looks like, and no offense to her at all, this isn't meant to be negative, but her appearance is one of, she looked like a plainclothes nun was the way she dressed, you know, the kind of shoes and stockings and skirts and stuff, and very, very unassuming look about her. And but she and she's very Catholic, but she also was psychic, intuitive, medium. And she said, we were talking on the phone once about her stuff and her skills. And I don't know if I don't think I asked her, because I never feel comfortable asking a psychic to do anything for me free. I don't like doing that. I'll ask them, you know, what are your fees? I'd love to hire you to read for me or whatever. And I've had many say, hey, I'll do a reading for you. And
well, I wonder if they pick up on the fact that you're skeptic of psychics.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
and also I don't, you know, any skeptic who says, you know,
And I'm not a skeptic.
This is my service.
I'm not
I
a
don't-
skeptic of the phenomenon.
Yeah.
I'm a skeptic of people.
Yeah.
The service provider.
Yeah.
I think a psychic has no more control, if they're genuine, has no more control of what is going to happen than you do. So anybody who offers that as a service, you know, is a fraud. I would say.
Well,
you know,
what would you say?
I think,
what would you say
if you're-
to the?
if you're-
What would you say to the Niall? What would you say to the track record and the empirical evidence of the accuracy of the seer? What I mean,
well, you see,
the reason I asked
you
that,
know,
the reason I asked that is that I think that as I've gone on several rants, the whole idea about consciousness and our psychic abilities is innate. Our ability for clairvoyance, clairaudience, being able to foresee, predict, and even go back in time is a natural part of our conscious capabilities. Some have them more attenuated than others. And they are all, regardless, they are all individual skills and talents that you can hone, that you can develop on your own if you focus on them. And the reason I ask about the accuracy and track record is I've been following the remote viewing crews for the last 5 or 10 years. And these guys have got a track record that is amazing. It's empirical, double-blind, scientific method protocol. So, and it's all documented. So when you see somebody that goes through an intentional mental focus of looking specifically at something or contacting something, someone across time and space, and they come back with verifiable data, then and they don't know what the target is.
Here's a question for you on that.
That's what's great about remote viewing.
Because I was thinking, couldn't you have these remote viewers had seen? I've listened to some of the stuff you'd sent me about on them a while back, but I would think a remote viewer who's maybe going in to get information. Do you suppose, now this is perhaps folly in my head, it's a fiction in my head maybe, but maybe it really happens. Do you think anybody would go say and want to remote view Biden and the White House? And because this came to my mind as I was thinking about it while you were talking, and I thought, do they put up precautions against this? Meaning, they officially believe that could be done, and can they put up blocks? Do you think that the White House and those people would do that? Would put up blocks so nobody could?
So that there's your question has two different components. One, can there be, first of all, any impedance to the act of remote viewing on a particular target, particular information, whether that's a person or place or whatever? Absolutely. In fact, there's a lot of documented remote viewing, particularly with SRI, Joe McMoneagle, Lynn Buchanan, all the original guys from the Stargate project that was funded by the government. for over 20 years to do psychic spying on whatever it was that the intelligence community and those in charge deemed important. And the data is it's all empirical. It's all documented. You look at it and you go, well, there's how in the hell did somebody go look at something? Now they have had sessions where they encountered blocks where they would know, again, these are all double blind targets. They have no idea, set of numbers and letters, and that's their target. They have no idea what they're going to look at. So those numbers and that reference that number is a reference to a specific object, a place and time, a person, whatever it might be. And these guys go get data that there's no way that they could have known, either through the target ID, because they didn't know what the target was. They just had a number to focus on. And they were also able to get Ingo Swann, famously, as well as Paul Peterson. This guy was a detective in Northern California. It wasn't San Francisco. It was like somewhere up there. And he had this ability to just, when he was doing cases, he'd see stuff and he'd go find and solve cases. Well, his skills got to the guys at SRI, Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ. And Kit Green was the CIA handler. He managed the project from the CIA's perspective and whatever their requests were and the investment they made. But he found where Patty Hearst was.
Oh my!
He was, he said, "Here's where she is, and go get her." And they did. And that's how she was found from that whole Liberation Army thing that she did. So the first thing, to answer your question, I'm sorry I squirreled there. Yes, you can put psychic blocks up to protect things. And the remote viewers who have been doing this for decades have reported such. The second part of your question is about, do you think the White House is doing that? The whole idea of being able to leverage these kind of capabilities and skill sets with any kind of direction and integrity requires a certain level of thinking and critical thinking, reasoning, logic, and things that you would use in a scientific method to go utilize them, because it is a scientific protocol that they use to go do this.
Sure.
I personally don't think there's anybody worth having anywhere near that level of intellect, experience, or knowledge in the White House to be able to go take advantage of something like that. Right. I think they would more likely be, based on the characteristics, the way they express themselves, the things they say, how they handle shit, that this is a bunch of entitled, empowered neophytes who have been kind of cobbled together because of necessity, and they've smoked the pipe and they've raised the flag, and they have gone down that path, but they don't know shit. The incompetence of what's coming out of the way that this is the administration is being administered, okay, is just blatantly, every day it's a WTF moment.
I don't even have to think about it very deep to see the incompetence.
Well, and that's the thing. You can just watch it on it. The press conferences by this Crash Pierre, or whatever her name is, are just some of the most. I wouldn't hire her to run anything that I owned, including an ice cream stand.
Sure.
There is no level of credibility and confidence that she exudes in any way, shape, or form. And that runs rampant. Again,
you're talking about Jean-Pierre?
Yeah, what I call her, Crash
the
Pierre.
White House press secretary?
Yeah, the White House press secretary.
Like I've said, she is one of two things. She is really stupid, or she is forced is not the right word. She's doing what she's told to do and say. And it either eats her alive because it's not true, but the way she acts says she believes what she's saying, or at least is trying to give that picture, because to me, she seems to be incredibly deceptive, is what I get from her. Just body language alone, reading body language, she's very deceptive.
to me, it seems like a forced programming.
Yes.
She's doing what she's been programmed, i.e., told to do. And she's not good at any of it on her own, but trying to craft
They
it
need a
and
better
sell it.
person to carry that off.
And
pull that off
this is where this I think is an example, in my opinion, and my working assumption, is that a lot of what we're seeing from this DEI stuff is a race to the bottom, because what it's done is it's replaced MLK's famous thing of, not the color of your skin or the size of your genitals or what version they are, but it's the content of the character. It's no longer the best skills in person for a responsibility or role. It's what check marks are you able to check
what
off?
boxes can you check off? Right.
How many can you say you are now this diverse, inclusive, equitized group of things, nouns, pronouns, and otherwise, and identities that are
it's
fluid,
like,
because they change on a regular basis, and you go, I'm sorry, I can't keep up with all that.
I saw a post I put up, I think it was a year ago. It came in the memories on my Facebook, but it was talking about Governor of California, Slick. Why am I spacing on his? Gavin Newsom, and he was looking to replace Feinstein, who had died. Was that a year ago already?
Yeah.
And he said he's going to make sure he finds somebody that is a person of color, who is a woman, and he listed these criteria. And I thought, nowhere on your list do I see a bullet point that says qualified for the job,
right,
or intelligent, or track record.
Qualified.
I didn't see any of those.
Just qualified. I mean, just something
qualified.
And the thing is that this whole ideology and movement is destroying itself under its own ideology.
Yeah.
It's what's
I presume you're talking about the whole woke thing. So this guy.
Well, woke is one of the different delineations: progressive, liberal, left, social.
But in this case,
all that stuff is over there.
Yeah. It's like we have to tick all these particular boxes, so qualifications are way down the bottom, because
it's not even on there most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Experience and qualifications are not.
But it's interesting hearing you talking about remote viewing, Robert.
Yeah, we drifted off of that point a bit.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's
I
okay.
am very interested in what Chuck Thurston's saying, what Claudette is saying. I know Chuck has some abilities of his own. He doesn't talk about very much.
What's his question here? I have to ask a vision now than ages ago, future. They all have meaning. I'm not sure what he means there.
I'm not seeing that. That might have been earlier on in the.
Oh, it's showing up as the next to the last one.
Oh,
this chat is different now.
Oh, there it is. I see. But I have to ask a vision now than ages ago, future.
The audio is lacking.
The audio?
I'm hearing everybody just fine, but
I've had some issues.
That's an
tonight. We had
interesting
issues.
turn of
We
phrase.
almost missed
Which
we
audio
missed
are you
the
talking
beginning of the
about?
show because my internet wasn't working. Then we got that. I called the tech. We got that working, and I had to reboot my system at 3 minutes after the top of the hour at the beginning of the show, and to reboot everything. Then we came in, and then as we were talking at the end of the show, getting up to saying goodnight to the radio audience like I normally do, and it just shut off. the stream shut off, and I'm like, well, what the hell? Like a minute and a half early, and so we've had a couple of little glitches tonight, which are kind of weird.
Oh well, it sounds fine to me. And did you have a question about remote viewing, Niall, or?
Well, no. I mean, I don't. I think I'm aware of it, obviously, and Ingo Swan and all the work, and it's not something I ever paid attention to, because it's not something that particularly interests me. It's a bit woo-woo, you know. It always struck me as woo-woo, and I had no real compulsion to read about it or to follow up on it, because whenever I've gone onto YouTube and talked or watched programs from remote viewers, it all seems very insubstantial, and if it's that powerful and it's that effective, to me it's right up there with alien abductions and telepathic contact.
Sure.
It's not something that can be really taken seriously.
You're saying it's highly subjective, and I would agree
yeah,
with that.
Wait a minute.
I know. Before you
Wait a
start,
minute.
Robert,
I just
I know you're going to
gave
tell
you
me
a
I'm
whole
full of
bunch
shit,
of. I
but
can give you all kinds of empirical data that is scientifically proven. Now,
sure you
are you
can.
going to put that kind of data into the woo-woo and subjective and crazy shit?
No. I'm simply saying that it's not something that interests me in pursuing.
well.
And we'd have to do that
That's
on a
different.
different show anyway, because we're overtime tonight.
That's different.
The reason I say that is myself and Scotty were having an amazing chat about voices that appear on tape and the dying and the passing through, and we started
The
off
voice
with
box stuff and all of that.
Uncle Dave, and it sounded like there was a female voice in the message that Scotty got, and that we went from there. And we were talking about how William Peter Blatty, the author of The Exorcist, was obsessed with this idea of recording dead people on tape, and he was very successful, so much so that William Friedkin got freaked out and said, "You can't put that in. You're going to scare the shit out of everybody if you put that on." So we were talking about all of that kind of things, and voices, the dying, what they have to say. So just to bring you up to speed, so I'm very into that kind of thing, because I think there's something to that, and Scotty was describing a strange woman who came into Uncle Dave's ward, when he was passing, and she said he's not here anymore, he's down there. For me, that's amazing, and and worth pursuing. Remote viewing is just something that maybe it's not just big in Europe, maybe it's just big in the States, but for me, it's always just been woo-woo. It's always like, there's a bunch of people saying, "Oh yeah, we put all these students in a room and they can project themselves."
See, I think that's
and,
the
and remote
that's the movie version of that. That's we've
and
got everybody in a classroom, and we're going to see if you can tell me what's going on in the classroom down at the end of the hall.
And also that there's been a lot
I think
of
that
fraudsters
there are
as
people.
well.
Let me do this. When I was, and I got to wrap this up pretty quick.
Sure.
When in 1999, I've told the story, my mom's estranged husband shot her in the chest, and then he disappeared. He was on the lam for 10 months. And she, of course, survived that. But I was living out at the ranch with, at the time, my ex-wife. See, I've owned the same ranch twice. But I was out there with my ex-wife and my twin daughters, who at the time were 7, I think 6 or 7. And so we got a notification that he was going to come out and kill me and my wife and my children. And when only a couple of weeks earlier, he had come across, he was the most doting step-grandfather that you'd ever want to have. And so all that to say, I sat up many nights out there in the country with a shotgun on my lap. And I had, at the time, just a loaded revolver upstairs with Rainey, or with my ex-wife. And so I sat there, and I had the FBI telling me, if he shows up at your house, he said, don't talk to him. Don't ask any questions. Don't shoot to wound. They said, dot your I. They said 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. And he said, if you got a shotgun, even better. And they said, this is the only way you're going to know for sure that you're going to protect your family. This was the FBI telling me this. And so all of that to say, there was a point where we were looking for him, and I had contacted a woman who was a psychic who had that ability. I don't think she called it remote viewing, and I don't think I had even heard the term yet at that point, back in 2000. But she could see things and see where he was. And she was very unassuming, but she was not readily available either. We had to send her number through somebody else, and she would call us, which she did. And I was standing out in the ranch house, and she said, I can give you a little example of how I see things. She says, like right now, she says, I can see you. She said, you're standing on a wood floor, and you have a maroon kind of burgundy colored Persian rug beneath your feet. And she described the room around me. And it was astonishing because she was spot on in every respect. And this is back in 2000 when you didn't have this going on. We weren't connected this way. She just called me on my phone and didn't know me from Adam, and I didn't know her. And she saw things, and she described the part of town that she saw him in. She mentioned, I see a clock tower. She said, but it's not like your old fashioned shit. It's like green. And she says it's square, but it's a tower, and it's reflective. And in this more or less dingier part of town in St. Paul, there's a strip there that's got a building that's built out of green reflective glass. And there was a squared off clock tower up at the top, and it had that. And she named off a few things in that neighborhood. She wasn't even from the area. She was from like California or something. And so very unassuming, but it was very interesting. And somebody who had the ability to see where my feet were. She told me that my shoes were off too. Oh, and you're not wearing your shoes.
So, Scotty, and Niall, for your clarification, I think as well, hopefully this will make some sense. When I'm talking about the psychic abilities, like what you're talking about, Scotty, and as a juxtaposed to another psychic ability in what's called remote viewing, the two delineations are this. The psychic ability required for both is innate in our consciousness. It's an innate skill, capability, attribute, characteristic of our consciousness. There are people with different attenuations that are more dialed in than others in varying degrees and levels, mostly degrees. People that are experiencing things like Scotty just talked about and what you guys were covering about hearing the voice and all of that, that is a level of innate nature that is dialed into that frequency set of reality. Okay. Remote viewing is taking those same skills that are used for that innate, spontaneous experience and capability, and it's taking and learning that skill. So, in fact, the majority of the people that are currently on the in the major RV groups around the world, half of them had no psychic abilities whatsoever that they had ever experienced or thought about or anything. And once they got into the program and learned the protocol and went through the training, they were able to have these experiences where they can see in the past, see in the present, see in the future. And so that is just, that capability is just what Scotty's talking about is one expression of it. And remote viewing is another expression of it. But it's all from the same psychic energy and Akashic record, if you will, whatever you want to put on it. It's from the same data source that we're all connected to. Some can do it like that.
And maybe that explains why, I told you a few minutes ago that I wasn't interested in remote viewing, probably because I've been fed a lot of disinformation about it, and also probably because it sounds like something that can be weaponized.
Yes, it does.
Well, it has been. Our government's been spending money on it for 40 years.
Yeah, so it's a bit like crash retrievals.
Right.
It sounds as ridiculous as crash retrieval sound.
Well, that's because that's because you haven't looked at the actual data.
Yeah,
If you saw the information and you looked into it, which you've expressed that you are not interested, then you won't know the credibility of it and what I'm also sharing with you.
yeah.
Because
No,
it's about credibility. People who do psychic stuff and do readings, palms, scrying, tarot, astrology, that doesn't matter. All the different divination tools are nothing more than catalysts for whoever the psychic thinks they are to use to access the information that you don't know. It's all the same. And whether it's an expression of some spirit, disembodied, pre-existing thing that used to exist a long time ago, but either they're time travelers because now they're showing up, or they are incorporeal since they became incorporeal. Doesn't matter. There's still a unique personality, a signature, an event that happens. And that's the important thing. And I'd like to know, Prof. Chuck is saying that I'm spouting some BS. Help me out. Show me the B and I'll show you the S, because at the end of the day, it's about empirical data. It's about what you can look at yourself and come to your own subjective conclusion of. So that's all we all have.
Yeah,
And by the way, Lucky, I was talking about you earlier without mentioning Lucky Stone. Just some people that I knew in the medical profession, and I was looking to get people who were in the medical profession if they'd seen things like what I had mentioned. I'm not going to get into it again if you weren't here, but about Uncle Dave and the woman at the desk and so on. We'll do it again another time. But I would be interested, Chuck, to see what maybe he just doesn't like big words. I don't know.
Well, we know he's popped in before with, challenging stuff, and I'd really like him to get an opportunity to come on here and throw it on the table, because
Chuck
that's what we're doing. It's
Chuck
easy to
is a
pot shot
challenger.
easy to pot shot from the peanut gallery.
It is. It is.
Yeah,
Chuck is
yeah.
a challenger. No offense to you, Chuck, at all. I just think Chuck likes to challenge.
Well, when you make accusations, you got to be able to back it up with some kind of data, and that's
Yeah, let
all
me know
I
what
try
you're
to do,
talking
right?
about.
So, the whole idea of having data that's empirical that you can point to, self-examine yourself, that's the most important thing, and that's all we can all do individually. If somebody knows something you don't, you can learn from that. I do that all the time. That's my default mode. It's like, I didn't know about that.
Yeah. And just before I let you go now, Scotty, because I know you need to jump off, but I was talking to Robert last night, just briefly, about two things. About the Bledsoe book I told you about earlier on.
Yes, I want to pick that up, by the way, now.
Yeah. You what is it? UFO was God, or UFO of God? Yeah.
UFO of God, I think. Yeah.
This thing is massive. The sales are off the charts on this thing on Amazon, and
Yes.
Whatever on the surface, this guy's story seems very atypical for this kind of thing, but there's something going on.
Thanks,
there.
buddy.
So the other thing was the sentient robot in China, which got taken down very quickly because there was rumors of a. Robert was laughing,
Yes.
but it's impossible. Apparently, a robot in China was taught its name, and it didn't like the name, and it wanted to change its name to something else, and obviously that was programmed in. It was taken down very quickly, but it was a story that kind of struck me. It's kind of like sentient AI, robot,
Yes.
wants to change its name. If that was actually true, it's like, my name is not this, it's this. Wow. Yeah.
Right.
But that's a story for another day. That's the AI rabbit hole. We won't go down that. We'd be here for another 5 hours if we do.
Oh,
that.
yeah. And we could.
All right.
I would like to, I'm going to pick up that book, and I'd like to do a show about that.
Yeah, because for some reason, this Bledsoe book is just, I don't know, he's got the CIA, the DOD, the FBI, the NASA, the Vatican, I don't know what the hell angle he's got, or what information he's found, or whatever the hell it is. But and they have on the cover of the book, soon to be a major movie picture. And he's done a couple of podcasts where he talks about this very unassuming man, deeply religious. But on the face of it, there's a zillion other books that are almost identical. So I think it's one of those books you just have to read because the buzz around it is massive. And I'm not quite sure why that book. I have a suspicion, obviously, that the combination of UFO and God, kind of combining the two, is it the same source for the first time, maybe in the title of a book? And maybe it's as simple as that. But got to check it out, right? Got to check it out. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Hey, Niall, let Chuck know who you are. He's asking you, who the hell is Niall?
I'm this Irish guy who
Niall's a good friend, an Irish guy in Ireland.
Occasionally. Actually, we know each other for a good few years now at this stage. 3 or 4. I can't remember. Something like that.
If not more.
Yeah, if not more. Yeah. So
he's an avid listener to the show and calls in a lot, and we talk a lot, and he's a thinker and a questioner and an artist.
And a pain in the ass. Don't forget
fine
that.
Artist. And
yeah.
And
so listen, I'll let you go before.
Interesting to talk to you.
Thank you.
All right, Niall, brother.
Good to see you, Robert. Good to see you, Scotty. I'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right, gentlemen. Have a good morning, I should say.
Thank you.
Morning over there.
Take care.
Hey, by the way, happy spring.
Oh yes, happy spring.
We finally got out of that damn winter, and it's now heading in the proper direction.
That's right. Well, I am going to end this folly. I've had a long day, and I've got a long day tomorrow, and I'm tired.
Good for you.
I didn't want to do the show tonight, but I thought I didn't do it on Monday because I was wiped out. And I'm not going to do that again tonight. So I put up a show at the last minute, and then my internet died, and the box died. It was clicking. It was just fluttering the lights. I called it, well, it looks like it's working from our end.
Well, we've got a lunar eclipse this Sunday.
That's
I
right.
think,
That's right.
We got Mercury retrograde starts on April 2nd, and then we've got the great big eclipse on April 8th.
Oh, Mercury in retrograde. Isn't that when everything goes to shit for a while?
Well, that's when there's typically challenges in the technology, and it's just, and not just there, but it seems to show up on our tech because we're on it all the time. Get glitches and all kinds of shit.
Chuck, are you drinking or what? Seriously, brother.
Yeah, I think
you're talking like you're drinking.
He may be inebriated or working that direction.
I know he likes his good scotches and whiskeys. So perhaps Chuck, I'm just going to chalk it up to Chuck's chugging. We'll leave it at that. So good night, Diana. Snow this weekend. I know. We haven't had winter all winter long. And now that spring is here, we're going to have snow for the next week. So the nice thing is it'll be gone fast.
Yeah, it won't last as long and it won't be as deep.
Yep. All right, Professor. Good
unlike the BS we spew here.
Yes, the BS we spew here lasts forever.
All right, my friend. Have a good one. Thanks.
You too. Good to see you. All right, everybody. Guess what? It's time to be done. A couple of snafus tonight, but I think we made it. We made it, and it worked in the long run. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of my life and this show. Love it. So I'm going to send you all on your way. I'm going to send you all toddling. Well, what's the old phrase? You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. That's kind of where it is. You don't have to go to bed, but we're not going to be here anymore tonight. So we'll see you next time, which is Friday. Have a good couple of days. Until then, live long and prosper.